how we love our little apple tree. Oh, how we love our little tree. In spring our little apple tree has blossomed pink and white. In spring our little apple tree has blossomed pink and white. Oh, how we love our little apple tree. Oh, how we love our apple tree. In summer our little apple tree has leaves of silver green. In summer our little apple tree has leaves of silver green. Oh, how we love our little apple tree. Oh, how we love our apple tree. In autumn our little apple tree has apples red and gold. In autumn our little apple tree has apples red and gold. Oh, how we love our little apple tree. Oh, how we love our apple tree. My name's Cath Little and I love stories and songs and I love apples. And the stories and songs I'm going to share with you are under the apple tree. All stories and songs about the apple harvest and apples. My children's grandma has got an apple tree in her garden in Sussex. And I love it in winter, and I love it in spring when it's full of blossom, and I love it in summer. Best of all, I love it in the autumn when it's full of apples. And my house has got a big box of apples at the moment, ready to be turned into apple cakes and apple pies, but not apple sponge. Because I wouldn't make an apple sponge because the best person in the whole world to make apple sponge is my mum, and she's here. I wouldn't dare make an apple sponge because she's the best. I also love crunching apples, and I've always loved that since I was a little girl. When I was a little girl, I used to like those sweet, yellowy, green, sweet apples, and I like the crunchier red and green ones, the pippins and the coxes. My first story happens when an old lady wakes up one morning and decides she wants an apple cake. She wants an apple cake, but she hasn't got any apples. That doesn't stop her. She doesn't let that stop her. Once upon a time, and a very long time ago it was, there was an old lady. She woke up one morning in autumn and she thought the thing she wanted most that day would be an apple cake. She had all the ingredients in the house. She had flour, butter, sugar, eggs, cinnamon, and nutmeg and ginger. She didn't have any apples. In her garden she had a plum tree, but she just didn't want to make plum cake. She looked at the plum tree and she looked at the ingredients in the house. She thought, I'm sure there's a way to make an apple cake. And then she had a good idea. An idea for a story, an idea for an adventure, an idea for an apple cake. She took a basket and she filled it with those plums. She thought, this is what I'll do. I'll go out into the world with a basket of plums. And I'm sure there's someone who would like the plums to make a plum cake or plum jam. And if they've got apples, well, we can swap. She thought it was a good idea and off she went. She set off into the world with a basket of plums under her arm. She walked and she walked and she walked and she walked and she walked through the wide, wide world. She walked and she walked and she walked and she walked and she walked through the wide, wide world. Well, she walked and she walked until she came to a farmyard, a neighbour's farmyard. And in the middle of the farmyard, there was the girl, the daughter of the house, feeding the chickens. There was a racket. There was a sound of wah, 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 and a pecking and a squabbling, and there was a cockerel there, cock-a-doodle-doo. In the middle of it all was the girl feeding the chickens. It was breakfast time. That's why there was a racket going on. Over all the noise, the old lady managed to say, "Good morning." "Good morning," said the girl. And they started talking while shouting over the noise of the chickens. And the girl said, "What have you got in that basket?" "I'm glad you asked," said the old lady. "I've got plums. And I'm looking for someone who's got apples and who would like to do a swap." "Oh, I love plums," said the girl. "Do you know what I like doing? I like making plum jam. I like making plum jam for my dad because it's his favourite treat. I wish I could make some plum jam today. Well, said the old lady, if you've got some apples, we can do a swap. Oh, said the girl, I haven't got any apples. She thought for a bit and she said, I have got feathers, looking at all the birds around her. Well, feathers do. Now, the old lady didn't really want feathers, did she? She was after apples. But she did think to herself, better one person happy than two people disappointed. So she said, yeah, give me your feathers. So she ended up with a sack full of feathers and the girl ended up with a basket full of plums. And she went off just after she'd fed the chickens to make some plum jam for her dad. Happy. And the old lady saw she was happy and she was happy too. And off she went. She walked and she walked and she walked and she walked and she walked through the wide, wide world. She walked and she walked and she walked and she walked through the wide, wide world. She hadn't gone very far when she came to a garden. It was a garden that she particularly liked because always, throughout the year, it was always full of flowers. And she liked to stop and admire it and see what flowers would grow in there. And when she looked over the hedge that day, well, she saw lavender and she smelt the scent of lavender. She saw old roses and some red sedum and some sunflowers. And she saw many, many, many flowers in that beautiful garden. And as she was admiring the colours and seeing what was growing, she heard there was an argument going on. The people who owned the house were sitting in the garden, shouting at one another. No, yes, yes, no. Had some sort of argument. Now, the old lady hated seeing anyone unhappy, so she hovered by the gate, hoping she could help. Good morning, she called. And they saw her there. Good morning, they said. Is everything all right? She said. Well, we're actually having a disagreement. Maybe you could help us. I'll try, said the old lady. She opened the gate and in she went into the garden. What's the problem? Well, they said, our grandfather has left us a beautiful old chair, but the cushion needs mending. I think we should put straw in the cushion. I think we should put wadding in the cushion. What do you think? And the old lady said, I don't think straw will do. See? But I don't think wadding will do either. The best thing for an old cushion is feathers. And I've got some. And if you've got some apples, well, we could do a swap. Feathers, they said. Feathers would be perfect. They would make the best, softest, most comfiest cushion. But we haven't got any apples. We have got flowers. What about flowers? Well, the old lady thought a bit and she thought to herself, she did. She thought, better 2 people happy than 3 people disappointed. She said, give me your flowers. So they went and they picked a beautiful bouquet of flowers. And it was full of lavender and roses and sunflower and red sedum and chrysanthemums, purple and blue. It was beautiful. And they gave it to her, and she gave them the feathers. And they were so pleased. They started mending the cushion there and then. And they were so busy, she walked out of the garden gate with a bunch of flowers in her hands, off on her way. She put the flowers in the basket and set off. She walked and she walked and she walked and she walked and she walked through the wide, wide world. She walked and she walked and she walked and she walked through the wide, wide world. She went up a hill and she met a young man coming down the other side. Good morning, said the old lady, for it was a beautiful morning, like this morning. But the young man frowned, put his head down and said, there's nothing good that I can see about this morning. She said, oh dear, what's wrong? Well, he said, I am on the way to see my true love, the one I love best in the world, and I wanted to take her a ring. But when I got to the jeweller's this morning, it wasn't ready. And now I'm going empty-handed. And the old lady said, better empty-handed than empty-hearted. But she could see that he was sad and worried and troubled. So you know what she did? She gave him the flowers. Take these flowers to your true love. Everybody loves flowers. The young man smiled, and he said, that's true. And he took that beautiful bunch of flowers in his hand, But then he gave it back to her and he said, wait a minute. And he unclasped a golden necklace from around his throat. He took the flowers and dropped the golden necklace in the basket. And off he went, running down the hill to his true love with flowers in his hand. A golden necklace shining like the sun in her basket. Well, I didn't expect a golden necklace. She walked and she walked and she walked and she walked. She walked through the wide, wide world. She walked and she walked and she walked and she walked. She walked through the wide, wide world. By the side of the path, she saw a woman with a little baby and a little dog by her feet. And the woman looked cold, and the woman looked hungry. And the woman reached out her hand and said, I'm hungry. Me and my child, we've had nothing to eat for so long. Have you got any food? Well, the old lady didn't have food, did she? But she did have the necklace. She put it into the woman's hand, and she turned to go. Thank you, said the woman. Thank you. I can buy lots of food for this, for me and my baby. Thank you so much, but I've got nothing to give you. The little dog by her feet ran towards the old lady, and the old lady said, you don't need to give me anything, and she turned to go. But the little dog, it was such a cute little dog, one of those waggy-tailed dogs with little sticky-out ears, and the little dog ran after the old lady, so she bent to stroke him. And as she stroked him, she put her basket back down on the floor. He jumped into the basket, and she picked it up, and he looked quite happy in the basket, with his little nose poking out the basket, wagging his tail. I think he wants to go with you, said the woman. Really? Yeah. Off they went. They walked and they walked and they walked and they walked and they walked through the wide, wide world. They walked and they walked and they walked and they walked and they walked through the wide, wide world. And the old lady, she thought about all the things that had happened to her that morning. First of all, she'd had the plums, and then she had some feathers, and then she had some flowers, and then she had a golden necklace, and now a little dog. And maybe I'll find some apples. Maybe. Well, just as she thought that, there in front of her was, can you guess? An apple tree. An apple tree, a dear apple tree, laden with red and gold apples, heavy with apples. And underneath it on a bench, an old man was sitting. Good morning, said the old lady. Good morning, said the old man. She said, that's a lovely apple tree. And the old man said, what use are apples if you're all alone with no company? Can you guess what happened? The little dog jumped out of the basket, came and made friends with the old man. And the old man patted him, and the little dog barked happily and then went round and round the apple tree, and soon the two of them were the best of friends. Help yourself to the apples, said the old man. And she did. She picked some apples, red and yellow, sweet and delicious. She put them in a basket and she headed off for home. And when she got home, she peeled the apples. She chopped the apples. She put them in a bowl with flour and sugar and butter and spices and eggs. She mixed it all around. She put it in a tin. She put the tin in the oven. She waited. And when the apple cake was ready, she took it out. She cut herself a slice. She made a nice cup of tea. And she ate it. And it was the best apple cake she'd ever made. That's the story. Inside every apple, there's a little secret. My nice red rosy apple has a secret all unseen. You'd see if you could peep inside. 5 rooms all neat and clean. In each room there are living 2 pips, both black and bright, each fast asleep and dreaming of lovely warm sunlight. My nice red rosy apple has a secret all unseen. you'd see if you could peep inside. 5 rooms all neat and clean. In each room there are living 2 pips, both black and bright, each fast asleep and dreaming of lovely warm sunlight. Once upon a time there were 2 sisters. There were 2 sisters, and one girl, she was always good and kind and never complained, and the other girl wasn't like that at all. The one sister, she'd do the cleaning, she'd do the sweeping, she'd do the mending, she'd do the cooking, she'd do everything she was ever asked to do, and she did it with a smile on her face. The other sister was not like that at all. The other sister was lazy, and she hated work, and she liked complaining. But it's a very strange story, and it's a very strange thing that the mother, which daughter do you think she liked the best? She liked the lazy one. She let her stay in bed all day, and she gave her chocolates to eat. Well, one day, it was a day like today, a little bit cold with the frost on the ground. And the mum said, the hard-working girl, the hard-working sister, she said, go outside and do the work, which wasn't very fair at all. Me and your sister are going to stay in the warm. Go outside and do the work. Now, it was a long time ago when everything had to be made by hand. And the work that morning was the spinning. She gave the girl some fleece and wool, and she gave her a spindle, and she set her out to work by the well. Spin that fleece into wool to knit. So the girl went. She went. She didn't have much choice. She sat by the well and she started to spin. And she started to spin. But as she was spinning, her fingers felt cold because the air was cold. There wasn't much sun around. And as she was spinning, her fingers were so cold she could hardly feel them. And as she was spinning, her fingers were so cold they were numb. And as she was spinning, her fingers started to crack and to bleed. And a little bit of blood went on the spindle. She thought she'd better wash the spindle, so she leaned over the well and she dipped the spindle into the water just to wash it off. But her hands were so cold, the spindle dropped into the well. Whoosh, duk, 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 right to the very bottom. Do you think her mother would be pleased with that? No. Well, she tried to reach it. She got a stick and she leant over and she tried to reach it, but the well was deep and there was no help for it. So she went home and she said to her mother that the spindle was at the bottom of the well. And do you know what her mother said? Go back and don't come home without it. Well, that wasn't fair at all. And the poor girl, she went to the well again and she reached out and she tried to reach it, but she couldn't. She tried to reach it, but she couldn't. In the end, what she did, she jumped into the well herself. Whoosh, duk, 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 duk. When she opened her eyes, she wasn't here or there. She was in a meadow full of soft grass, and she wasn't wet. There were daisies and buttercups on the grass all around her, and the sun was shining. Well, she got up, and she saw a little path, so she decided to follow it. And the path led to an apple tree, full of apples, red and gold and green. And as she walked to the apple tree, it started to sing. Shake me, my apples are ripe. 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 And the good girl said, of course. So she climbed into the fork of the tree, and she reached out her hand and she shook some of the branches of the apple tree. And the apples tumbled down like gold. And she reached out and shook the other branch of the apple tree, and the apples, they tumbled down like of gold, red and gold. And when all the apples had tumbled from the tree, she climbed down again. She put them in a nice pile, and the apple tree said, thank you. Take an apple for your kindness. Take an apple for your kindness. So she took one of the apples, crunched it, And she went on her way. Bless you. Well, the path led her this way and that way, this way and that way, and she could smell the smell of baking bread. The path led her a bit further, and the baking bread was stronger. And there, by the side of the path, was an oven. No house, an oven. And as she got to the oven began to sing. Take out my bread before it burns. Take out my bread before it burns. And the girl said, of course. So she opened up the oven, and she took off a little bit of her dress, and she took out the bread, making sure she didn't burn her fingers. And when all the bread was out, she closed the oven door, and the oven said, thank you. Take up some bread for your kindness. Take up some bread for your kindness. She did. She took a nice loaf, and it was delicious. She followed the path, and the path led to a strange little cottage. And outside the cottage was an old, old lady with white hair and a crinkly, wrinkly face like an old apple, and brown eyes like apple pips. Good morning, said the old lady. Good morning, said the girl. But when the old lady spoke, the girl could see that all her teeth were made of iron. So the girl was a bit frightened. She turned away, and the mother said, don't be frightened. My name is Mother Holler. Would you like to come in? Yes. There was apple cake for tea and a feather bed to sleep in, and the girl slept very well that evening. And the next morning, Mother Holler said, will you help me in the house? And the girl said, yes. So she swept a little bit and she cleaned a little bit, and then Mother Holler said, I've got a special job for you. Shake the duvet, shake the quilts, shake them as much as you can, for when you shake them, the feathers fly and it snows on the earth. For I am Mother Holler. Shake the quilts and shake the duvets, for when you shake them, the feathers fly and then it snows on the earth. For I am Mother Holler. Well, the girl stayed with Mother Holler for 3 nights and 3 days, and there was always apple cake for tea. And even though she was happy there, strange to say, she missed her home. And she said to Mother Holler, can I go home? And Mother Holler said, you can. And she took her down to the end of the garden, and there was a gate. Walk through the gate, but before you do, she gave her back her spindle. The girl walked through the gate, and as she did so, there was a shower of gold. Golden coins raining down on her, filling her pockets and the back of her shirt and her hands. And she walked 1, 2, 3 steps, and she was in the garden back home. And there was the old cockerel. Cock-a-doodle-doo, cock-a-doodle-doo, your golden girl comes back to you. Cock-a-doodle-doo, cock-a-doodle-doo, your golden girl comes back to you. Well, the mother and the sister ran out the house, for although she'd been in the other world for 3 days, maybe 10 minutes had gone by. They saw her with the gold and the spindle, and they asked her to tell the story, and she did. And the mother thought that it would be good for the other daughter to go and get some gold too. So she sent her to the well to spin. Did she do much spinning? She didn't do much of that. She threw the spindle into the water, whoosh, duk, 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 and she jumped in afterwards. Whoosh, duk, 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 duk. When she opened her eyes, she was in the soft meadow with buttercups and daisies, and she began to walk. She followed the little path that her sister had followed, and after a while she came to the dear little apple tree, and the apple tree sang, shake me, my apples are ripe. Shake me, my apples are ripe. But the girl said no. Why should I shake you? One of your apples might fall on my head. I might get my beautiful clothes ripped and torn. No, I'm not going to do it. And she walked on. She followed the path, and after a while, what did she come to but the oven? And the oven sang, take out my bread before it burns. Take out my bread before it burns. And the girl said, No. Why should I? What a stupid place to put an oven. Why should I do that? Why should I try and burn my hands on your bread? I'm not going to do it. And she walked on. And the path led to the little house. And there was Mother Holle. And the girl wasn't scared because she thought, now comes the gold. And Mother Holle invited her in. And there was apple cake and a feather bed to sleep on. And the next day was the work. Did she do the work? She did a little bit of sweeping. And a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But she wasn't very keen and she wasn't very enthusiastic about it. Next morning, Mother Holle had to wake her up. And the third morning, she stayed in bed all morning. Well, Mother Holle had had enough. She said, it's time for you to go home. And the girl thought, now comes the gold. Mother Holle took her to the end of the garden, to the garden gate. She handed her back a spindle and she said, 3 steps and you'll be home. And the girl took 1 step. Did gold fall upon her head? I'm sorry to say it did not. On her head there fell slugs and snails and puppy dogs' tails and all sorts of yucky things. All sorts of yucky spiders and worms and all sorts of disgusting things. She was shivering and quivering as she walked home. And when the cockerel saw her, he said, cock-a-doodle-doo, cock-a-doodle-doo, your yucky girl comes back to you. Cock-a-doodle-doo, cock-a-doodle-doo, your yucky girl comes back to you. And when the mother and sister saw her, they were shocked. Took them ages getting rid of all those shivery, quivery worms and puppy dogs' tails, but in the end they did. And maybe she was better afterwards, but I'm not sure about that. That's the story. Here's to thee, good apple tree. Here's to thee, good apple tree. Stand firm at root, bear well at top. Every little twig bear an apple big. Every little bough bear an apple now. Caps full, hats full, 60 sacks full. Hurrah, boys, hurrah. Hurrah, girls, hurrah. Here's to thee, good apple tree. A long time ago, and still they do it today, people wassail the apples. Wassail the apple trees and say good health to the apple tree. And they sing the songs. And once, a long time ago, there were 2 brothers. 2 brothers who grew up on a farm with lots of fields and lots of land and apple trees there too. And when the 2 brothers were grown up, their father died. And he left all the land to the youngest boy. And when the youngest boy had all the land, that youngest brother had all the land, he decided to keep it for himself. He didn't like sharing. But he had to give something to his big brother, so he said, you can have the tumble old cottage that Grandad used to live in. And the big brother, he thought, I'll get on with it. I got no choice. So he went to live in the tumble-down old cottage. And outside the tumble-down old cottage, there was a couple of old apple trees. And near the old apple trees, there was a shed with an old donkey, all skin and bone, and an old ox who wasn't feeling very well. But the big brother, he thought, I'll get on with it. He cut the grass and he gave it to the donkey to eat. And the donkey, after he'd eaten that green grass, got a bit fatter. And then he picked the right herbs and he rubbed them into the old ox's skin and he spoke kind words to the ox, and the ox perked up after that. And then he put the donkey and the ox into the orchard where the apple trees were growing, and the apple trees began to flourish. And then he mended the tumble-down old cottage with rocks and bits and pieces and decorated it and made it quite cosy, like it had been when the Grandad lived there. But with all that work of looking after the donkey and the ox and mending the house and caring for the apple trees, he didn't have much time to earn any money. And his younger brother came round wanting some money for rent. He wanted him to pay for it. So he came knocking on the door. He said, the rent is due. You're going to have to give me some money to stay because I'm good to let you stay in this house. But I will take some money off the rent. You don't have to give me so much if you do something for me. What is it? Well, it's nearly Christmas Eve. And on Christmas Eve, they say the animals talk. Only for a little bit. From the time when it strikes midnight, for the 12 chimes, all the animals speak. And I've got something to ask that old donkey of yours, because that old donkey knows something, I'm sure. And that donkey's going to have to tell me the answer. What do you want to ask? Well, somewhere on this land, Grandad buried some gold. And I reckon that donkey knows. And because I'm the boss of the land, because I own the land, on Christmas Eve, when the clocks strike midnight, and I ask the donkey will tell me where the gold is. So, what I want you to do is wake me up just before midnight and bring me down, and I'll knock a few pennies off the rent. Well, his brother said he would. And Christmas Eve came. The big brother, he took some holly and ivy and he decorated the tumble-down old cottage and he put some up in the cattle shed too. He gave a little bit extra to the donkey and the ox, and he had his own tea, and then the last cup of cider he put into an old tin cup and he mulled it over the fire. And when it was warm in the ashes of the fire, he took it out to the apple tree and he poured it on the apple tree roots. And he said, "Wassail, good health to you. Here's to you, good apple tree. Stand firm at root, bear well at top. Every little twig bear an apple big, every little bough bear an apple now." Wassail. And do you know what happened? The apple tree man said, "Thank you." The apple tree man said, "Thank you. You're good and kind, and you deserve some good luck. Dig in my roots and see what you will find." Go and get a spade now. Well, a brother, he got a spade, and he dug in the roots of the old apple tree. And what do you think he found? Grandfather's gold. In a tin box. He broke it open and he saw it was full of money. And the apple tree man said, "Now go and put that somewhere safe, but don't tell anybody about it. Don't, especially not your brother." So he put it safe in the house. And then he came down to the roots and tidied up the roots and put the turf back. And the apple tree man said, "It's nearly midnight. Go and wake that brother of yours." So he went to the big house and knocked on the door and said, "It's nearly midnight." And they both came down to the cattle shed. And in the cattle shed, midnight had just struck, and the donkey and the ox were talking. And the donkey said, the two brothers listening at the door, and the donkey said, "Here he comes now, that brother, the mean one. He's going to ask us where the treasure is, isn't he?" And the ox said, "He is." And the donkey said, "Well, when he asks him, we're not going to tell him, are we? When he asks us that question, we're not going to tell him." And the ox said, "We're not." And the brother, he ran in and he said, "But you've got to tell me. I'm the boss. I own this place. I own all the land. I own you." But the midnight chimes had struck. And all the donkey said was, "Ee-aw." And the ox said nothing at all. Here's to thee, good apple tree. In winter our little apple tree has branches brown and bare. In winter our little apple tree has branches brown and bare. Oh, how we love our little apple tree. Oh, how we love our apple tree. In spring our little apple tree has blossom pink and white. In spring our little apple tree has blossom pink and white. Oh, how we love our little apple tree. Oh, how we love our apple tree. In summer our little apple tree has leaves of silver green. In summer our little apple tree has leaves of silver green. Oh, how we love our little apple tree. Oh, how we love our apple tree. In autumn our little apple tree has apples red and gold. In autumn our little apple tree has apples red and gold. Oh, how we love our little apple tree. Oh, how we love our apple tree.